I like this view. You know, we talked about, you guys know where we're talking about maybe building a chapel or a sanctuary or a tabernacle, whatever you want to call it, a church eventually. And we have a view similar to that. And I always said it would be cool to have, in one way, to have like me stand in front of the window and everybody look at that because you see that beautiful view. But there's a couple things wrong with that. One, I would wash out, right? It'd just be like, because like Sister Susie, I can barely see her face because all the light coming in around her. And then the other thing I thought was everybody would just like start daydreaming. Or like when it starts raining, everyone would be like, oh, it's raining. I'd see everybody stirring, you know, and be like, what's going on? Oh, it's snowing, or so, you know. So I don't know, maybe put it on the side. I don't know. But that's a pretty view out that window. All right, today we're going to start a new chapter in John. And I guess if we were titling sermons, and Brother Jason is going to title it when it goes up there, it'll be Yeshua's first miracle. That's what this one is about. So, John chapter 2. Yeah, you getting your Bible out? Very good. And the third day, there was a marriage in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Or the mother of Yeshua was there. Now, when it says marriage, I should double check this. What's it say in the scriptures? There was a what?
Wedding.
A wedding. That's getting closer. It was a wedding feast is what was going on. And these feasts were sometimes, the typical Western American feast or wedding is like what? An hour? 2 hours, and then you have a reception, and that can go depending on the thing. But it's definitely during one day, and it's not even a whole day. Some of these wedding feasts could go several days. Go on. They were big parties, or they could be. So this is a wedding feast or a marriage feast in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Who's that?
Mary.
Mary. All right. I'm going to find something else about Mary here in a second. And both Yeshua was called and his disciples to the marriage. So they were invited to the marriage. Now, Mormons evidently, I saw this online, I was looking it up. I don't particularly remember this, but Mormons evidently believe that this wedding was Yeshua's wedding. Now you're going to find, no, it's not. He was called to the wedding. He was invited to the wedding. His Pizzos, and he doesn't have all of them yet, but his disciples that he's gathered so far are invited with him, and they come to the wedding. So whose wedding was it?
Someone else's.
Someone else's. That's an excellent answer. Let's keep going. There's another clue here. And when they wanted wine, the mother of Yeshua said unto him, they have no wine. So they're starting to run out of wine in this wedding feast. And Mary comes up to Yeshua. Now picture this. It's like a big deal, right? It's probably a bigger party than what we're having right here. And there's a hubbub going on, right? And there's happiness. This is a time of happiness. And Mary pulls Yeshua aside and she goes, hey, they're running out of wine. What's she care? She's hostessing this thing. Mm-hmm. She's honchoing this wedding, but it's not anywhere near where she lives. So it's in Cana. So why is she hostessing it? I can only surmise that it's relatives of theirs. Mm-hmm. All right, and so for whatever reason, Mary says, hey, yeah, I'll help do this wedding thing. It happens all the time in families here. It's like, yeah, I'll help you do the thing. So she's kind of hostessing this wedding. The guests are starting to run out of wine. And here's the deal, and I think it's probably of a relative. And so there's this young couple getting married, things are going on, and the wine's getting low. And so she goes to Jesus, Yeshua, and says, hey, we need help with the wine. Here's the deal. These are small towns. Even big towns of the day were small towns by today's standard. Everybody knows everybody in these towns, and everybody gossips. People gossip today. And they do it on Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. Well, there, it's all at the marketplace, at the well, at the job site or whatever. And everybody's talking about everybody. And it's a very small, closed thing. And here's the deal. If you run out of wine at your wedding, that's horrible. That's a social no-no. That's like, can you believe they invited us to their wedding and they ran out of wine in the first 2 hours? It doesn't say that, but I'm just using that as an example. They ran out of wine? I mean, why wouldn't they have enough wine? And the thing is, that would follow that couple that was getting married forever in that town. They would be known as the couple who ran out of wine. Oh yeah, you don't want to babysit for them. They ran out of wine at their wedding. They're not going to pay you. I mean, it just goes like that. So Mary is concerned. I think Mary is hostessing this thing. I think she's concerned. They're obviously relatives of some sort that are marrying, and she's concerned. Hey, this is a bad thing. The wine's getting low, and we need to take care of it. Wine is amongst the Israelites, the Jews, was, and I submit is. It's a sign of happiness and joy. That's why you drink it at the weddings, and you pour it out on as offerings and this and that kind of thing. And that's another thing. Well, we'll go into that later. But it is wine, as we commonly know it as wine. All right, so she comes up to Yeshua, and she says to him, hey, they have no wine. And Jesus saith unto her, and I'm going to want to hear this in the scriptures, but it says in King James, woman, what have I to do with thee? My hour is not yet come. What's it say in scriptures?
Woman, what is that to me and to you? My hour has not yet come.
So that sounds kind of harsh, right? It sounds like a rebuke of his mother. It is a rebuke of Mary, but it's not as harsh as it sounds in the English. First of all, woman. In English, especially in modern English, if you say, now my wife and I call each other woman and man all the time, and we say it in like a fake gruff voice, and we're teasing each other, so it's become like a term of endearment. I'm like, woman, what's for dinner? But it's actually funny to us, because in America today, calling somebody like woman, that's like a bad thing, right? It sounds like a slam. But really, if we were to translate this into like more modern English to get the feel for it, it'd be madam. Madam. So it is an honorific word. It's a good thing to call a woman. However, it's not what you call your mother. You call your mother or mom, not madam. And so right here, so there's one thing. We'll sum the whole thing up here in a second. And then the other thing is, he says, what have I to do with thee? Or how does it go in Scripture, Sister Kate?
What is that to me and to you?
A better way to put that is, hey, it's really none of our concern, this wine thing. So don't worry about it. Don't be troubled about it. It's really not a big deal. But the fact that he calls her woman, there's a differentiation here of what's happening, and he is signaling that now Yeshua talking to Mary, our relationship has changed. I am no longer viewing you as my mother and I'm your son, even though, I'm 30-ish, right? We're not looking that way anymore. You're a woman. You're a woman to be respected and loved and, blessed above women. But we don't have this relationship because I'm working for the Father right now. I'm doing His will, and I've got all this to do. And so that's a signal, and because you all know what's coming, this is the first miracle, and he knows that's happening. But this is interesting. It's the first miracle. We know it's going to happen because we've all read this before. And he says, my hour is not yet come. Hey, what concern is that of us? It's not my time to shine yet. So that sounds like Yeshua saying, hey, we're not doing any fancy schmancy miracles here. It's not time for that. Why did she come up, do you think, to him? One, for the wine, because she's hostessing. Two, I'm just thinking here that it is family, and she doesn't want them tainted for the rest of their life as the cheapskates, Hannah, who ran out of wine. And but here's another thing that I was thinking, and I'm kind of going out on a limb, and we can talk about this later. But it's a small town, right? I was thinking about this. They're small towns, people talk, everybody's in everybody's business. Do you remember when the angel comes down and tells Joseph, your wife is with child? And he's like, what? She's supposed to be my wife. And then he had three choices, right? He could have had her hauled to the gates and stoned. He could have given her a bill of divorce and said, we're done. Or he could have just married her and dealt with it, which is what he ended up doing. But his first idea was he was going to give her a bill of divorce and keep it on the down low, just like this thing never happened, but we're not, I'm not going to have you stoned, but we're done here. And then the angel convinces him. Do you think word got out? I'm thinking people were suspecting. You know, it's been 30 years now. Mary's had friends. Mary's talked to people. They're her friend today. They're not her friend tomorrow. Dun, 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 dun. I'm thinking people are wondering. I'm thinking Mary's kind of also thinking, look, she knows he's the Messiah. I mean, she raised him, and she knows he's the Messiah. But nobody else really knows he's the Messiah yet at this point in the story. And I think she's kind of ready for him to, all right, little birdie, fly. You know, in her mind, right? Because she's still a mom. Right? And so she wants her son to go show his stuff. I'm just thinking there's some of that going on there. She definitely wants Yeshua to shine because she wants him to make wine. And he tells her, hey, it's not time yet. We're not going to do that. Another thing, the reason that he has this rebuke to Mary, where, again, I'll just read it here. Hey, woman, what is I to do with you? My hour is not yet come. He's also telling her, don't tell me what to do. That's really what he's telling her. It's like, you think this is important? Hey, don't tell me what to do. It's not time yet for me to do this. That is what's going on subtext there. We'll come back to this in the end and make a point on this. All right, so he tells her to do that. And then the next thing we read, there were set there. Oh, that's another. Jesus said to her, what is it? My hour is not yet come. And then his mother says unto the servants, and these are free servants. They're not slaves. They're just people like maids, if you will, or people who are hired for the wedding, that kind of thing. Mary says, the mother says to the servants, whatsoever he says unto you, do it. So she comes to him and says, hey, we're running low on wine. And he's like, hey, don't worry about it. And then she looks at the servants and she goes, hey, whatever he tells you to do, do. And she walks out. These are the last words recorded, spoken by Mary, the mother of Yeshua. It's kind of interesting. Whatever he says to do, do. It's a pretty good way to have your last words recorded, right? Whatever Yeshua says to do those things. If you love me, keep my commandments. That's what Yeshua said. Do what I tell you to do. All right. Whatever he says unto you, do it. And there were set there 6 water pots of stone, after the manner of the purifying of the Jews for their mikvahs, right? So they had to be made out of stone ritually, so that, you know, they couldn't be pottery or clay or something like that. So they had to be carved, hewn. After the manner of the purifying of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece. Does anybody have a note or a different rendering of how big 2 or 3 firkins is?
2 or 3 measures.
Each one of these, I used to picture like the big Roman amphor pictures, you know, that you see in the wrecks and stuff. And so I was picturing, okay, there's a couple of these things. No, I actually looked this up, and I looked at it in a lot of different sources. We're talking 20 to 30 gallons each. 20 to 30, a 30-gallon container today is one of those little blue drums that we store water in, right? You know, it's about this high. It's like a big keg. So this isn't just one servant tossing this thing up on their shoulder full of wine and going around and pouring wine. This is a big, heavy thing. And so they're sitting there and they're full of water. And Jesus looks at the servants, verse 7, and he says unto them, fill the water pots with water. And they filled them up to the brim. And he said unto them, draw out now and bear unto the governor of the feast. So what they did is they didn't fill those with water and then carry those out. They filled those with water, and then they filled pitchers, whatever they're serving wine in, with the water. They poured water into those stone things. They poured water into those pitchers, and then he tells the servants, take them out. And what does it say in scriptures for the ruler of the feast?
Master.
It's like the maitre d', like the head waiter, right? It's not like some king guy. It's not like, you know, I'm the king overseeing the wedding of my son. No, it's like the head guy that's getting everybody served and making sure everyone's taken care of, like the head caterer kind of guy who's there to cater this thing. And so they're like, hey, take them to him, and then they're servants right in the back, and then he'll say, all right, yeah, we're going to take these out and give them to these people, put one on table 5, and things like that. But think about that. They're going out to the guy whose job it is to keep this wedding going, this flow going, and they're getting ready to give him water. Right? We okay?
Yeah.
I see lots of heads bobbling. All right. So they're getting ready to give him water. Don't you think you'd have a little bit of trepidation? I do. What the heck are you bringing me? Go back there and get the wine. I mean, that's what I'm thinking that they're thinking. That he goes, take it out there to him. And he's, all right, and bear it to the governor of the feast. That's what they mean. And they bear it. Now, did Yeshua say, all right, wait a minute, before you take those pitchers out there, let me pray over them. Oh, Father, let this be your will. Let this water turn to wine and bless this happy couple with joy and happiness. Oh, Father, let this be Welch's grape juice and show them your son's glory. Or here, let me stick my finger in it, or let me spit in it, or let me shake it up and down and go hooba, ooga, ooga, booga. Yeshua does nothing. He says, put the water in there. Okay, now take it out there to the master of ceremonies. That's all he does. No hype, no muss, no fuss. It's really interesting to do a study and go through all the ways Yeshua performed miracles. I did one time on healing. Sometimes he touched, sometimes he spoke, sometimes he spit in the guy's eye, sometimes he spit in mud and rubbed it in the guy's eye. I mean, he did it all different kinds of ways. This way, for his first miracle, there's no waving of the hands, there's no nothing up my sleeve. He just says, hey, put the water in there, take it out and give it to the guy. That's all he says. And when the maitre d', the ruler of the feast, had tasted the water, that was made wine. He knew not whence it was, but the servants which drew the water knew, and the governor of the feast called the bridegroom. Now see, here, we'll just read this next line, then I'll come back to that. He says unto him, every man at the beginning does set forth good wine, and when men have well drunk, which means when they're getting a little tipsy, then that which is worse. But you have kept the good wine until now. He's amazed. There's a couple interesting things here for me too. Who is responsible in America for buying the wine at the wedding?
Dad.
What dad? Whose dad? There's two dads. The wife's dad in America, right? The father of the groom, the family, of the bride. The bride's family pays for the wedding and all that stuff and everything that goes with it. That's their kind of thing. Well, here the groom pays for it. Is this groom an Israelite? He is. This groom's an Israelite. So what's that tell you? Who should be paying for weddings? Think about that. Think about who should be paying for the party. Because he's calling the bridegroom who obviously provided this wine and he's saying, hey, here's the thing. Just something to think about. Many cultures, before a man could marry a woman, he had to go to her father, or his people would go to her father's people, and they would arrange a deal. And part of that deal was, man, you got to cough something up for my daughter. Now, one was because the dad has, his people are leaving and he has no one to help and that kind of thing. And so it's like, hey, I need something for this. But the other thing was to show that you're a man capable of maintaining yourself. And Indian case, American Indian, you got to bring me 15 horses. Dude, if you can't get 15 horses, you're not worthy of my daughter. I don't want my daughter being a one-pony family household for the rest of her life. So he had to buy the wine. Now, let's talk about this wine. This is not Welch's grape juice, right? And I know we know this. Everybody here knows this, but there's a lot of people out there in YouTube land that for some reason think that this wine was Welch's grape juice. Nobody puts the good Welch's out first, and then when people are well drunk on good Welch's grape juice, we get the off-name brand Walmart brand, right? I mean, come on. But people do put out the good beer first, and then it's like, okay, now we'll drink, Pastor Joe's Keystone or something. Or whatever. Now people are screaming in YouTube. Ah! But it was wine, oinos or yayin, and people go through such hoops and jumps to try and show that this is something that it's not. They go through heaps and jumps, which I didn't know about until I started doing research. I just didn't even want to go there about this whole Mary thing and how Yeshua talked to Mary, because there's, Catholics are out there worshiping Mary and stuff like that. And it's like, oh no, he wouldn't talk to her like that. Oh yeah, he did. Talk to her just like it says in the Bible. So they were drinking wine. And most people serve the good stuff first and then bring out the cheaper stuff, but oh no, not you. You save the good stuff till last. 11. So this also tells you the wedding's been going on for a little while. This beginning of the miracles did Yeshua in Cana of Galilee and manifested forth his glory, and his disciples believed on him. Just to finish this bit of scripture, and after that he went down to Capernaum, he and his mother and his brethren and his disciples, and they continued there not many days. So, let's go back and kind of look at the story a little bit. The servants are in on the miracle, right? The servants know it's a miracle. Actually, the groom and the maitre d' or the head of the wedding, however you want to look at the head waiter, the caterer, they didn't really know it was a miracle. Now, the groom was probably wondering, where'd that good wine come from? I'm going to talk to my wine supplier and tell him, hey, way to go. Maybe he's already in his cups because it's his wedding night and he doesn't know. But they didn't really know that a miracle had happened. The only people initially that knew that a miracle had happened was these servants. They saw the water poured. They poured it. Then they dipped out the water. Then they carried it out, probably thinking, oh no. And then the guy's like, man, this is good wine. Then they're probably kind of like, because I don't know if they had clear wine glasses. I'm thinking maybe not, right? And so the guy's going, so can you imagine that? You're like pouring it, the guy's drinking. He's like, this is really good wine. And they're like, man, what have you been drinking? And then they look and they're like, wow, that is wine. So they knew. But it doesn't say anything about the servants believing. And so I was looking at that, and I think we can pull a couple things. One, they got the blessing, the joy of actually seeing the first miracle. I mean, they did, for whatever resulted from it, they got to see the first miracle. And why did they receive this blessing of the first miracle? Because they obeyed Yeshua. Obedience brings blessings, right? We say that. And he says, fill up the water. All right, take it out of the water, put in those pitchers, take it out there and serve it. They did what he said to do. And not only did they do it, they didn't half-step it. They filled it to the brim. They could have been thinking, man, this is stupid. You want me to take water out there? This is going to go over like a Led Zeppelin, man. But no, they're like, hey, cool, we'll fill it up to the brim and take it out. And so, they worked hard. They got the blessings. And I just thought that was neat. That was like obedience brings blessings. Another aspect of this story, let me see here, verse 11. In the beginning of the miracles did Yeshua in Cana of Galilee and manifested forth his glory. All right, so he's starting to show his glorious Messiah because he did just do this miracle. So it's like, wow, he did a miracle. Take that back. It's towards the very beginning. First verse of chapter 2. And the third day was the marriage in Cana in Galilee. So his glory is manifested on the third day. That's got to be foreshadowing, right? Because on the third day he rose again. That has to be foreshadowing of that John is showing us here when he writes this and relates this. And so I thought that was kind of neat. When he tells his mother, woman, what does that to do with me and you? You know what? What is that? And my time is not yet. And then he turns around and does it. Did he contradict himself? Was he just being a smarty and then he regretted it? No. He was demonstrating the point that our time is not his time. We don't tell him when to do things. We can ask, even so, come Lord Yeshua. Even so, come Master Yeshua. That's asking him to come. We'd like him to come. But we're not saying, hey, you need to be here at 2 o'clock tomorrow because it's getting pretty bad around here. Right? We don't do that. I have heard people in prayer commanding Yeshua. It makes me shiver in a bad way when they do that. Jesus, do this. I don't think you have a proper attitude of respect if you're telling him to do anything. Because number one, he might not want to do it at all. It might be a horrible thing to do in the big scheme of things, in his scheme of things. And you're telling him what to do. And so we don't tell him what to do. Our time is not his time. His understanding is not our understanding. But then he does do it. And think about his first miracle. He could have chosen anything for his first miracle. He could have healed the guy that was full of demons and was throwing himself in the fire. He could have healed the sick woman. He could have healed the leper. He could have done all these things. He made wine at a party. because the party was starting to run out of booze. I mean, really, that on the face of it, that with the people there, this is not some solemn toasting. All right, and now we will have a toast to the bride. No, this is a party, and they're drinking wine. That's why the guy even said, wow, most people put out the good stuff first and then the cheaper stuff, but you save the rest for last. It's a party, and that's his first miracle to keep the party going. I mean, that sounds almost blasphemous, doesn't it? It was about joy and happiness and blessings, which, oh, by the way, came through alcohol. Now, we're not supposed to get drunk. We're not supposed to be falling down and slobbering and crawling across the floor and stuff, but we can drink a little bit and have a little bit of joy in our lives. And that was, I think, really interesting that his first miracle is to ensure the joy of people and also protecting that one couple from shame for the rest of their lives. And it would probably go on their kids. Oh yeah, your dad's the one. I heard about you. Your dad's the one that ran out of wine at your wedding. You must have really loved your mom. I mean, you know, right? And so all that's gone. All that's gone away, and he removed all that. I think it's a pretty cool miracle that he did. And then probably finally, if we look at John 1, in the beginning, John 1:1, was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, and the Word was Elohim. And the same was in the beginning with Elohim. Verse 3. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. John starts his book, if you will, talking very quickly early in there how everything is made by Yeshua. And here Yeshua makes wine. He didn't let wine develop, he made wine out of water. And the joy could continue. And then the final thing is glory was manifested on the third day. And we already talked about that. It was foreshadowing. And so that's the first miracle of Yeshua. That's what I wanted to cover today. I was really trying to have a short message today because I was picturing, you know, Roger passing out in the in the heat or something. I just said that because I saw you. But I was picturing you all being uncomfortable. And now I kind of want to just extend the preaching and stay here all day in this air conditioning. But we're going to finish there for today. So let's pray.